Ladies and gents, welcome to CG Reaction, and this is Why Does London Have 32 Boroughs by the channel Foreman. Yeah, London has a lots of boroughs, right? I saw the map of Greater London in one of the videos, and the sections was getting more smaller when it reached London. London has way too many sections and boroughs. But I think it makes sense since so many people throughout the history, 2000 plus year history of England, London, so many people have come and so many people left, another came, and there is lots of culture there. So different places were there, and then for the historical purposes people kept the places or something. So just there are so many places, people are not going to merge them, and if people are going to try to merge, then I'm pretty sure there are going to be people like, I don't want to merge with those people. I mean, by seeing the Football League of England, Premier League, one thing's for damn sure, lots of people, even their neighbors, they hate each other. They don't want to be part of each other. So there might be something like that. There's so many boroughs. Let's combine them, make smaller ones. People are like, I don't want to merge with that guy. So there might be lots of friction. Basically, it's just the history is so rich. So many people came and went. So yeah, there are so many places. That's what I think. I could be wrong. Foreman is a great channel. All of his British knowledge is awesome. His comedy is so British, so I love it. So yeah, remember people, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out the reaction. There's a link in the description. Check out the cast for the playlist. Check out the end cards, and yeah, let's watch this one.
New York City is divided into 5 iconic boroughs. Paris is divided into 20 unimaginatively named arrondissements. And London too is divided into boroughs, 32 of them.
But why 32? Why not 4?
Is divided into boroughs, 30.
Look at that, some of them are big, some of them are really small. Wait a minute, is this that Londinium, the old city? Yeah, it could be.
32 of them.
But why 32? Why not 4 or 703? Why does London, or indeed any big city, need to split itself up into bits?
Greater London is f***ing enormous. With a population about the same as an entire Switzerland, if it were run by just one council, it would be gargantuanly huge compared to the next biggest one in England. A super council like this would be bureaucratic and inefficient, and there'd inevitably be whole neighbourhoods that get totally forgotten about.
Another reason to divide...
I mean, yeah, that is also a good point, isn't it? I never thought of that. London is such a big and dense place. Lots of people are there. So lots of people are living there. I mean, look, lots of places have some big chunk of city in it, and other places are kind of, spaced out, some empty grounds and fields and things like that. London is really densely packed. And there are lots of people live there. So if you're gonna just mix small, very small number of boroughs, it's gonna be hard to govern.
London up is that it's not just big, it's diverse. From the touristy West End to the densely populated Victorian inner city to the leafy 20th century suburbs, different parts of the capital have different needs, and what they spend their money on is a local decision that should be decided locally.
I love this about, I don't know if this thing about entire England or just London, but houses are joined together throughout. There is no gaps between them.
That's why the city is split into several subservient subsections. While London had been subdivided like this for centuries, it had never been subdivided very well.
Before 1965, the area we now call Greater London was made up of 86 authorities, based mostly on ancient church parishes, many dating back to the Middle Ages.
There you go.
There's lots of evidence.
86, goddamn! But yeah, like I said, historical thing.
You can still see today. Walking around London, you may notice street signs that bear unfamiliar names, like Borough of St Pancras,
Borough of Hampstead, Borough of Finsbury, Borough of Holborn, Borough of Paddington.
Some of these old names survive today as parliamentary constituencies, and they also turn up in some unexpected places, such as St Marylebone Crematorium, which is nowhere near Marylebone, and St Pancras Cemetery, which is nowhere near St Pancras.
These were named after the councils that built them and not their locations, which in those days were empty countryside. The presence of the ex-boroughs can also be felt in some of the lovely town halls they left behind. Lots of these Grade 2 listed buildings have been turned into things.
Battersea Town Hall is now Battersea Arts Centre. Hampstead Town Hall is now Wack Arts Centre. Hornsey Town Hall is now Hornsey Town Hall Arts Centre, etc, 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 etc.
So
All
what
art
was wrong
centres,
with these old boroughs, and why were they gotten rid of? Under the old system, in this small area of North Woolwich, the primary school was run by the County Borough of East Ham, the emergency services by the County Borough of West Ham, the public baths and library by the Metropolitan Borough of Woolwich, and the secondary school by the London County Council, all within a 5-minute walk of each other.
The 86 authorities varied massively in size and what powers they had. There were too many of them and it was a cluttery mess.
And so, in the late 50s, it was decided to slim down from 86 to a more manageable number.
Suddenly,
Yeah, look, I get it. London is dense, but 86 is way too much. Look at that. So many sections.
every authority in London was in danger of disappearing. Except one. Right in the middle of the map is the very small and very confusingly named City of London.
Yeah, Londinium.
This square mile on the site of Roman Londinium has always done things differently from the London that surrounds it. To this day, they have their own separate police force, separate
Mayor
taxes, and separate Lord Mayor.
The corporation that runs the City of London is so old, nobody knows how old it is. The oldest document we can find is from around 12-something, with a little paragraph. We could talk for hours about what makes the City of London weird. Basically, due to its historical importance, the city was going to be left alone as it was, but the rest of London was getting a complete overhaul.
This is the first attempt at a new map, drawn up in 1957 by the inventor of Greater London, Sir Edwin Herbert, with 52 new boroughs. So why wasn't it used? When this map was shown to the man who had to approve the new boroughs, Minister for Housing and Local Government Keith St John Joseph, he didn't like it for two reasons.
I don't like it for two reasons. One, these suburban fringes aren't going to be part of London after all, and B, these boroughs are still too small. A proper borough should function like a city in its own right. It should have a natural centre for shops and services, good unbroken lines of communication like roads and rail, and a population no smaller than 200,000. A tried and tested size for an efficient council.
And so began the task.
He also looked like a dick. So, why was that outside places were cut? Were they not more densely populated like entire London is? So they're like, let's not make it part of London or something. Huh? This is they didn't protest. Like, we want to be part of London. Why did you cut us off?
Of creating the new, bigger, more powerful boroughs, each one more equal than the last.
This would be achieved by merging the old 86 authorities together in new combinations. Some neighbours were happy to dutifully partner up, but some authorities, actually most of them, were not feeling cooperative.
There you
making
go.
The puzzle much trickier to solve. Bitter long-term rivals East Ham and West Ham were furious about being made to merge. Hornsey was begging for an up-down alliance with lovely Southgate rather than a side-to-side one with smelly Tottenham. Woolwich was refusing to give up its weird little enclaves north of the River Thames, a map anomaly dating back to William the Conqueror. But this was precisely the sort of silliness getting rid of this entire exercise was the point of.
I'm sorry, it might be sound a bit weird, but this is just stupid. First of all, countries rivaling, I understand that. Some part of your country rivaling, even that I understand. But same city, but different sections of city, different boroughs, hating each other, don't want to be part of each other, just protesting. I don't want to be part of that. You already are. You're part of London. They are part of London. Boroughs don't matter. You're part of London. This is stupid. There shouldn't be a fighting like we don't want a part of them. There shouldn't be question of that. Like, shut the hell up. You're all part of London. What is borough and not, that is up to us, the government who runs things. Anything that would make us, make things more easier for us, we're going to do it like that. I don't care if we make 12 boroughs. That's not up to you. You're part of London. Just think about that. This is stupid. People are fighting like we don't want a part of them. We don't want to create a super borough or something like that. We want to be where we want to be. Shut up, man.
Wandsworth argued that it already met the criteria to carry on as a borough on its own. And it did, but what would then have happened to Little Battersea?
It couldn't join the surrounding Wandsworth or the new combined borough would be too big. The only solution was to slice the old Wandsworth in two.
Fights like this were happening in every corner of the capital, but arguably Keith's most controversial combination was here in northwest London.
Wembley was a mostly home-owning, mostly Tory voting, leafy suburb. Willesden was a mostly renting, mostly Labour voting urban neighbourhood. As well as being nothing alike, the two sides were isolated from each other. There were only two small roads connecting them. Keith was inundated with angry letters from both sides opposing the merger. But since all the surrounding boroughs had been solved really nicely, and he was in no mood to start all over again, the improbable and impractical shotgun marriage between Wembley and Willesden had to go ahead.
There was no way to give all 86 authorities what they wanted, but of the thousands of potential solutions, Keith calculated that the pattern to make the fewest people unhappy was this one.
The answer to the question, how many boroughs should Greater London have, was 32.
That's good actually.
In the end, Keith did rather a neat job.
Yeah, going from 80 plus to 32, that's still good.
But the fighting was far from finished. The 32 new boroughs now needed names.
Rather than cause any more arguments, Keith let the new boroughs come up with their own suggestions.
He should have just gone first borough, second borough, third borough, fourth borough. That should have been the name. People are like, what the fuck you just called me?
What they should be called.
But they came back with some really stupid names, like
Osselton Gore, Sorensen Spread, Chigglwanwood, 32, and 3 of them wanted to be called Riverside, including one not on the river.
If they want to be trusted to come up with their own names, they have to stick.
That is the thing with, I love that. There's a thing in Britain. There was a Top Gear episode which I saw. Somebody were, that there was a contest to name some machine or something during the snow. So people were going itsy bitsy snow machine and weird names like that. People, make that. Sometimes I feel like, Britain is like 4chan of countries. It just loves to troll things.
Stick to these rules. A. Give clear indication of location. It's got to be somewhere people have heard of. 2. No silly made-up words. And most important of all, 4. Absolutely no double-barreled or unwieldy long names.
Under these new rules, most boroughs chose one of their existing names. In most cases, it was obvious which one was most deserving.
Everybody who were there to, who were voting there to give name, they're like, man, now it's not fun. We are not going to get part of this. 80% of people left and 20% who are still there are like, you know what, let's just keep the old names. It's not fun anymore.
Especially Harrow. Usually, the honour went to the borough with the biggest population. But sometimes it went instead to the borough considered to be the most historically significant. And yes, this did cause massive arguments.
Of course it did.
It was bad enough being conquered by your neighbour, but imagine having to take their name as well. That's like telling the people of Scotland you're called England now, except nowhere near as big a deal.
If councils couldn't agree on an existing name, they either had to come up with a neutral compromise or have a neutral compromise imposed upon them. East Ham and West Ham put it to local residents.
I mean, that analogy is true about, England and Scotland. What if, rather than, Great Britain or United Kingdom, things like that, people will just go like, what, let's call Great England from now, United England. There would be war breaking out everywhere.
To pick a new name, which predictably resulted in the suggestions Hamstrung, Ham Sandwich, and Ham Sweet Ham. The councils ignored these and became Newham or Newham.
The rest of the new solutions, however, were nowhere near as inspired, and nearly all broke Rule A. Before 1965, hardly anyone was familiar with the ancient names of
Havering, Tower Hamlets,
or Hillingdon, which was only chosen because the grandfather of one of the civil servants was a rector of the tiny parish with that name. More lowlights include Redbridge, named after a red bridge demolished in 1921 that no one remembers, the dully monosyllabic Brent, a poor choice given that a Brent tube station already existed and wasn't in Brent. And in my opinion, the worst one, Haringey, named after a small neighbourhood at the southern tip of the borough, but with one of the R's removed and one of the A's turned into an E. The two spellings have been confusing Londoners ever since.
The 32 names had nearly all been agreed when Keith received a letter from the influential and very important Captain John Lichfield, Member of Parliament for Chelsea. The letter said,
"You better not forget the name Chelsea when you name our new borough, or I'm going to come round there and I'm going to wash this.
But I already promised the Royal Borough of Kensington they could keep their name.
He said. What could he do? To save his own skin, he let both sides have their way, producing the absurd dodecasyllabic The Royal Borough of Kensington and Chelsea.
Keith's own rules made it very clear that this sort of name wasn't allowed, and it was quite an insult to the much larger groups of people who'd campaigned hard for And Deptford and Battersea. As usual, it was one rule for the very posh who get taken seriously when they complain, and another rule for everyone else.
After decades of
I know, I get it, somebody threatened him from Chelsea, but didn't he had power of the crown or something? Didn't they hire him to do all these things? Why was he afraid? He shouldn't have done that. Now everybody else is going to be like, but you told us we can't name it like that. Now, why would we take name of our neighbor borough that we just merged us in? Put our name in there too. The people are going to be pissed off now.
pressure, the ministry relaxed the ban on and in 1979 when Hammersmith gained an and Fulham, and in 1980 when Barking gained an and Dagenham. And that's how we got the 32 boroughs with the 32 names that we're still using today.
But that's only half the story. How are the London boroughs run today? How is life different from one borough to the next? How can you tell when you've crossed a border from one to the other? And which borough has the best logo? Find out all of this and less in part 2.
I'm thinking of downloading NordVPN to encrypt my internet traffic and protect my online identity. But before I do, I thought I'd better go around and ask my friends who have it.
Yeah, people, go to nordvpn.com/J Foreman and support that channel. Yeah, this was a good. I kind of knew that because it makes sense. Like, you know, rich history of England and London would have caused lots of different named places. Now, if you try to cut them down, people are going to be pissed. Like, this has historical values. It had 86. They brought it down to 32. That's still good. But yeah, there will be friction. Which I find, one thing I find stupid is how people inside a city is arguing how we don't want to get associated with our neighboring borough. You're all part of London, man. You're just nitpicking way too much. But you can't have a borough where you just walk and in just few seconds you're going to be in another borough. That's very small. So yeah, the 32 borough, this feels about right, seeing how big London is. Yeah, this was a great video by J Foreman. I love this channel. Alright, people, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out the reaction I did. There's a link in the description. Check out the cast of the playlist like Internet Historian, Salmonella, SCP, Lemino, CGP Grey, Tier Zoo, things like that. And yeah, check out the end cards, and yeah, I'll see you next time.